Hi, it's Cedric Gelderman here. Welcome to the first expert interview we've done for a little while. And I'd like to introduce you to Elisa Moran from CH2 Vet. Hi, Elise.
Hi, Dick. How are you?
Thanks for joining us today.
No worries.
So why am I doing an expert interview with a wholesaler? Well, it's one I've been looking forward to doing for a long time because the drug bill, the material supply bill, whatever you want to call it, and excuse me for calling it, a drug bill, but that's what I'm going to call it typically for the rest of this interview, is the biggest cost in a practice. I mean, wages may be bigger if you add them all up, but leaving that aside, the drugs are the biggest practice cost. Now, in the average practice, out of a $1 million turnover, or R1 million or €1 million, the drug bill should be about 200,000, 20%, 21%, thereabouts. And in many practices, it's 250,000 or 300,000, 25% or 30%, and I've even seen it up as high as 45 and 50%, which is just incredible. So today is all about trying to improve that for you, because every dollar, rand, euro that you save in drug costs is a dollar in your own pocket. So that's the reason we're here today. Elise, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about CH2 Vet as well?
Sure, no worries. So I have a business degree from the University of Sydney. I actually started my career in corporate finance with one of Australia's largest banks, specialising in agribusiness. But I moved to the vet industry 8 years ago and worked with some leading pharmaceutical manufacturing companies, but switched to wholesaling 18 months ago to sort of fully use that skill set, because it's very much more focused on those business skills, so that I can input to the clients that I work with. And CH2, the company I work for, is Australia's leading pharmaceutical and medical healthcare service provider. We've got 10,000 clients and access to over 30,000 products within the country. So that's a little bit about me and CH2.
Great. Now let's get to the gristle of this conversation. What are the major, and I'll start off with the problems first. So as you go around dealing with your veterinary clients, what do you see as the number 1, 2, and 3 problems, challenges, let's call them mistakes even, that these practices make that's costing them dollars?
Wow. That's a big question. Probably the biggest ones would be the time wasted in terms of that drug ordering, wasting the money, so not looking at the stock turn or the product selection and the product mix.
Okay, I'm going to hold you up right there. No, cool. So let's talk about, so you've raised 3 things there straight away. So the first one was the time wasted in ordering. So how do we fix that? How does the average person watching this in a small practice small medium practice with no full-time stock control person, how do they save time on ordering?
Okay. Biggest way, stop the double, triple, quadruple handling. So if something runs out, they'll write it down on a piece of paper, and then at some point the nurse has to go and actually then put that product that they've run out of into an order somewhere. So use the automated integration in practice management software if that's something they use. Or one thing I'm working on with some clinics at the moment is tablet ordering. So on the walk around on order day, instead of writing it down on paper, then taking it to the computer, then implementing the order, use a mobile device on your walk around. Straight away the order's input, so you're cutting down 3 steps straight away.
So you're saying, put an Excel spreadsheet on a tablet, or
no,
what are you suggesting?
So a lot of the ordering platforms are web-based, so CH2 Direct is our web-based ordering platform, and it's accessible on smartphones, tablets, computers, but we're really trying to encourage the tablet device ordering because it just brings in that business efficiency.
So I'm guessing you can do this 2 ways. I'm guessing that as you do your walk around, you can order directly into the software of whoever you're dealing with, or is the other way to not do a dummy order, but do an order as you go every day, and then at the end of the week hit send?
Just hit submit.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So, and then, yeah, obviously the setting up the integration with practice management softwares that are out there. And we've got some capability at CH2 with a few of the leading practice management software companies, like RxWorks.
Okay.
And OpenVPMS is another one we're working on. And they're sort of becoming a more requested function of the wholesalers, so that if you're using your inventory management, then those orders are being created, you do a sense check and then you submit, and then there's an EDI in the background at the wholesale level.
So most vets would not be setting minimum and maximum stock levels.
That's correct. Yeah.
And you're suggesting that's a big way to save money.
Yeah.
Right.
Use that function in whatever practice management software you're using to its full capability. It takes time to set up and review, but I think it's worthwhile in the long run.
I was going to say the biggest thing I'm hearing from the video people now is it takes time to set up, but it's well and truly worth it.
Yeah. All the good things in life take time, but it's, short-term pain for long-term gain.
Okay, cool. Now, the second thing you said was stock turns. What's the stock turn?
So, ordering in and making sure it's going to be used up quite quickly. Otherwise, you've got money sitting dead on a shelf. I had a situation where a clinic ordered a product. It came in a box of 10. The use-by date was questionable for them because they weren't sure they were going to use the entire product in the 12 months of expiry date.
But Muriel's come to me, Bayer's come to me, and through whoever I'm dealing with, and they've said, "Hey, look, it's spring. It's spring. Buy 10 boxes and use it, and it's going to take me all summer to use it." Does that make sense or not? I mean, is that right or wrong?
So that's, again, you've got to do the cost benefit. In those sorts of products, there might be the benefit up front is definitely worth having that money sitting there. But some of the pharmaceutical products, those upfront benefits might not be your best friend because of the sheer cost of the drug and the time it takes you to go through that incentive buy, let's call it that, because that's generally what it is. So be smart about those decisions. We see the manufacturer deals, and some of the vets are just never going to go through the volume without then running into dating problems of the product.
Okay.
And turning that stock over quickly.
So have you got a thumbsuck rule, like a rough rule as to how quickly you should turn stock over? And when you should sell it by in order to make a buy a useful, profitable buy?
The more I think about it, probably not something that I've talked about in clinic level, but the sensible thing would be within 3 months, because I know on our hospital side of the business, we see 3 months dating sufficient because they're ordering in and they know they are going to use a product in that time frame. So I think that's maybe a guideline we can take from our human medical counterparts, that, they're the dates and the times that they work to.
And I'm glad you said that, because that sort of rings true with what I've read, learnt here, etc., that if you don't sell it within 3 months, don't buy the volume because it's costing you big time.
And the seasons in the vet industry, if you're looking at anything more than 3 months, then you're going to run the risk of pushing out into the next season where potentially those products aren't going to be relevant for the next 9 months.
And the other thing I'll mention from my perspective is if you've got stuff sitting in your reception area, what should, if we look at 4 seasons in a year, really what's the biggest display in reception should be what's seasonal. And if you're chewing up your shelf space with an out of season stuff, you're really chewing up profitability, aren't you?
Yeah, valuable space.
Yeah. Okay, so our drug bill is our second biggest expense behind wages, like I said. So you started talking about a number of things that you can do to reduce that, and we've talked about 2 of those. So what else now can they do?
I think looking at your supply channel, on average with the quotes that I do, we can save across invoices for a month an average of 10%.
Wow.
So looking at your supply options, knowing what you have access to, that would be the big thing. Really set aside some of those emotions and the status quo of I've done it this way for 16 years, and if it's something that you seriously need to address within the business, you need to look at all your current options, because as you and I have talked about in the past, this last 12 months in the veterinary industry, there's been so many developments and so many changes. It's the best time, I think, to really review some of these topics.
And let's be honest, today is this video isn't about promoting CH2 Vet versus ProVet versus Lippard versus any other wholesaler in any country in the world. We're trying to get an overall perspective of what you can do to save money on your biggest expense. But let's just be brutally honest about this, and Elise comes from CH2 Vet. Why should an Australian practice deal with CH2 Vet? And let's contextualise this, or broad contextualise this to the US or South Africa or Europe or whatever. What should a practice, and let's be honest, some practitioners run their practice as a lifestyle type practice, and this is the way we've done it, and this is the way we're always going to do it, and money isn't necessarily the end game. Other practices, money is the end game. So if money is the end game, what should they be looking for in their wholesaler? And talk about CH2, but like I said, we can make it generic for the rest of the world as well. What questions should they be asking their wholesaler? What should their wholesaler be doing for them on a broad brush basis?
Sure. So a couple of things come to mind. First of all, with CH2, we do offer such big savings on that invoice payable amount. That's number one. Look at saving the money right there on the
So that's a really bottom line. You want to save money, you've got to look at your invoice price.
Yep, look at the invoice prices. Second thing, in terms of the lifestyle component, a lot of vets want those rewards that they can claim in their personal life. CH2 partnered with American Express for a loyalty reward program. It's called Chili Rewards, and it's generous. It's market leading in Australia in terms of the dollar equivalent when you do the calculations back. So I'd say definitely look at the reward options available to you if claiming in your personal life outside the practice is important to the individual, the partners in the business.
And I'm just going to put in a disclaimer. Talk to your tax agent about whether that's legal in your country.
So, and part of that is, that's why we partner with American Express. We leave that to them.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and the third thing that I would say to look at with your supplier is the full complement. It's not just about the vet pharmaceuticals. It's your nutrition products, your medical products, instruments, equipment, your consumables. CH2, we have everything, and a lot of people don't know that about us. So looking at, I don't want to use the cliche, a one-stop shop, but essentially that's what you want, so that you're not having to place multiple orders on a day, pay multiple bills at the end of the month. The more you can rationalise your ordering into one supplier, makes some good business sense as well.
And that's, again, an economy of time. If you can just pay one bill rather than having to pay 5 suppliers, whatever that happens to be, it makes a lot of sense. And I'll certainly agree with Elise with respect to the human pharmaceuticals. So many veterinarians, and I'm talking about saving money now on your drug bill, so many of the vets are stuck in using veterinary pharmaceuticals because they're registered, etc., etc. But some of the human drugs, and clomipramine is an example, the human versions are just so much cheaper. And I know in some countries you have to use the registered veterinary form unless there's no other form. So just take that as a given if that's the way it is. But in other countries, you can simply get the client to sign a piece of paper saying that they're happy with the generic, just like you do at a chemist when you get a human script, and that can literally save you a lot of money. Yeah.
So, I have to take the tagline. If there's a vet-registered product, you have to use that.
Absolutely. I just had another thought, and I'd like your comments on it. One of the things I see in many practices, and there's 2 things going to come out now. You'll see one veterinarian preferring a certain product, and that might be the original, and then another veterinarian will have the generic, and there'll be a third veterinarian want another generic. feedback on that? Same product, different names.
Oh, look, so we have the same issue in the wholesaling warehouse component, it's having 6 products of the same drug sitting on the shelf. Personal choices is there, but I think rationalising that range is essential, and sometimes it's not about the buy price, it's about looking at what product gives you the best value, and sometimes it's a combination of not only the science and the reputation of the product itself, but it's about looking at your net price. So are there bonuses and rewards that your manufacturer reps can give you on those products, and combining it?
Yeah, so maybe it's time for the boss to become a benevolent despot and actually say, this is
the product.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And you're on the bus, so to speak.
I know there's certain practice managers around, and I won't mention any names, not practice managers, my apology, practice consultants, that when they work with a practice will say, you can have 4 antibiotics, and that's it. And I think that's a bit tough. I don't go anywhere like that, but that makes economic sense, doesn't it?
It does. And, rationalising the range, it's, we've had issues in clinics with vaccine protocols where 2 different vets in the same practice do 2 different vaccinations. It's a nightmare, not only for the staff and the ordering, but the stock control and the stock turn. So.
And let's talk about manufacturers now. This is something we had a little talk about earlier. And a lot of the veterinarians don't see the manufacturer reps because they're
busy.
They're busy and they don't see what value the reps have. And what about buying into is the wrong word. What about dealing more with, say, a Virbac and using their whole product line versus? And I'm not promoting Virbac, please don't. I'm just name just came to my head. But what about dealing with one particular company that has a range of products? They typically have bonuses or discounts
and rewards,
on top of what they'd get from their normal wholesaler.
Correct, and you need to combine those benefits. So, take a look in your dispensary room, and if you're seeing a common theme with the same manufacturer, and you've got a good chunk of their range in your product mix already, they're the reps, they're the manufacturers that I'd strongly advise you get to know who your account managers are, and see what they can do for you. There's some wonderful options out there, and manufacturers like loyalty the same way us wholesalers reward loyalty, and use those guys as your advocates, and use them to the advantage of your business. It's worth making time for them. A few of my clients use industry conferences to catch up with their manufacturer account managers, because the reality is they're busy every day in the clinic, but go to the big industry conferences around the state or around the country and use those 4 days to touch base, see where you're at, and know what's available to you.
Look, you'll have to excuse Lucy coming in, but she's not camera shy and she wanted some attention, so excuse my hand movements, but she's gone now. Now, at least there's the perennial challenge that vets have with paying freight for drugs. Now, some wholesalers charge you freight and some don't. What's your thoughts on that?
It's a sneaky cost that I think you guys need to be aware of out in the practice, because it just slips in there. So if there's a freight-free threshold option, use it to your advantage. We have a freight-free threshold, which is very easy to achieve, and take advantage of it. So because it adds up. And also be aware there are some fees and charges around dangerous drugs in orders, etc., that are on top of your usual freight costs. So when you're comparing savings and looking at the bottom line effect, you need to take into account those freight costs and find out where your free options are.
So we're talking about saving $1 here and $1 there, around there, €1 here. They're all little charges and little savings on individual products, but over a 12-month period of time, it can add up to many thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And the bigger the practice, the bigger the order, and therefore the more money saved. Yeah, now this is an interesting one, and I speak from personal experience when I was in practice. Do you order every day, or do you order once a week or once a month? And there's so many different opinions on this.
Yeah, there is. I think the two common ones I see are if the physical space in a clinic is an issue, it then becomes that just-in-time inventory where orders every day are the reality. Yep. And that's actually got its benefits for stock control and the turnover of the inventory. But there's a time drawback there because it requires a nurse or a practice manager to physically place an order every day.
Order every day,
yep.
Receipt every day, unpack every day,
Correct.
Put it in the computer every day, and
yep.
just on a time logistic basis.
It's a time pull.
It's takes longer to do that than to do it once a week, and it takes it. And once a week it'll take you longer to do it than if you only did it once a month. Yep. If you multiplied all that. Yep. So realistically, once a month plus top-ups is the best way if you can manage it.
If you've got the space, one thing that we sort of work with clinics on is most clinics have a big normal household fridge. So your cold chain products, for example, you've got the space, rationalise that into a once a month order. You know what your core products are, you should have a good idea of volume at certain times of the year, so order your cold chain products once a month. We set up templates for clients to use in their ordering patterns as a core monthly order or a core weekly order, depending on their preferences. I'm working with a new clinic at the moment where they order twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. They do their big order on a Monday. Because after the weekend, tends to be a busy period, their stock levels are at the lowest, and then they do that top-up order on a Thursday to make sure that they do have enough to get through the rest of the weekend. And that seems to work really well, that twice-week ordering.
And that's going to save them a significant amount of money on freight from whoever they're dealing with, if it's if there's a freight-free component, or even if they're only paying 2 lots of freight and they're actually paying for freight. And back in the days before the computer software, no matter what you're using, was not as good as it is now. That might have been a hard thing to do, to rationalise your orders, to twice a week or to once a week or once every 2 weeks. But realistically now it's just a matter of setting it up, isn't it? It's not hard.
Just look at crunch the numbers, being my number hat on. Look at the numbers, make some decisions and put them in place, and then enforce it with your support staff. So if you're relying on a practice manager or a senior nurse to do that ordering, you need to hand those decisions down to them and sort of, affect the change that way, so that you as the business owner start seeing the savings, whether it be that time save or that money save.
You mentioned staff here just now, and I'm going to ask you another question. And I see so many practices that make a decision to do something differently, whether that's buy paper from a different printer, to use a different electricity person or a repair person or a wholesaler or whatever. So in other words, the management or the owner or whatever has decided to change who they're dealing with. And in many cases, that works for a little while. But then typically a nurse or a practice manager or something who doesn't want change or is an affiliation with the previous service provider goes back to the old way of doing things. So if it's been analysed and there's a 5% saving, or whatever it happens to be, or whatever range of stuff, someone then stuffs it up.
Bucks the system and reverts to old habits.
Do you see that happening as well?
We do, and it's quite disheartening. We often take months to negotiate deals with practice owners, and they make the decision and they want to go ahead with it because it makes sense to them. Yeah. And as hard as we try to get the rest of the clinic staff on board, it needs to be handed down by the business owner, and then we just sort of keep coaxing along, and you kind of need to push through not just the first week, but a good 3 months until those habits change.
And look, I'm going to tell you a funny story, but it's not actually funny, at all. You've probably heard it as well, and I've heard of this happening when practices have changed wholesalers and nurses have wanted to change back. And in some cases, it's purely and simply because the free lollies, the free confectionery that came was the wrong brand or the wrong flavour, and so they might have saved themselves $10,000 a year by swapping wholesalers, but because the Mars bars were the wrong flavour, they went back to the old wholesaler. How crazy!
It is.
You've seen it as well.
Yeah. It can be the silliest reason as to why those support staff revert to the old way of doing things, and it requires the business owner to drive that change and reinforce it and ride it out. There's always going to be a transition period. I say to the new clients that we bring on board, we've got to hold your hand those first 3 months, because there's a lot of emotion involved in some of these big practice changes, and we support you through it, and hopefully we can support your staff through the change, and then everyone gets onto a smooth sailing ship.
Look, and I'll go back to what we started off talking about. Drugs are the major expense in a veterinary practice, and minimal changes in your behaviours with respect to purchasing and stocking and everything else can make major changes with respect to profitability. And let's be downright honest, the average practice all around the world nets 7, 8, 9%. And so a few minimal changes in drugs can bounce that up from 7 or 8% to 10 or 11%, something in that area. So anybody that's watching this really needs to work out whether they're serious about managing their business. Serious about managing their veterinary practice as a business, or whether they're happy just to have a lifestyle type veterinary practice. Feedback from your management degree perspective, business degree perspective.
So this is where I can get a bit harsh when I put my business hat on, because from the outsider looking in, I strip out that emotion. I've been working with a two-partner practice for the last 6 months, trying to win over their entire wholesale business. So one of the partners said to me, it's like contemplating a divorce. And when I hear about that, I'm married, so the emotion attached into something like that, I got it, but it's a business. It's not a personal relationship, it's a business relationship. And this is where I get a bit tough, where you have to treat those decisions with facts and figures a lot of the time, and then pick your best fit. So if relationships are valuable, that becomes a secondary decision. The forefront should be the dollars and cents side of it.
Yeah, and this is something I hear from vets all the time, that they know that they should be dealing with, drug company B, but they're dealing with drug company A, and they don't, even though, and they're going to save themselves a lot of money, but they don't want to change because the emotions get caught up. And I can certainly see that as a valid point. But the trade-off for that is, don't sit there and whinge saying your business isn't making money if you're not doing everything that you can to turn it into a business. And if you're a McDonald's or a Coles or whatever, a company in the world that's a big company in your country, they don't run their business based on emotion, do they? It's all up here, isn't it? And I'm not saying that's necessarily right. We're a small industry, but you've got to be careful about about maximising your opportunities.
Yeah, and there's never been such a period of change in the veterinary market, particularly here in Australia. As I've sort of seen in the last probably 2 years, 18 months. And as I said earlier, this is the best time to look at your options, because you're spoilt for choice and benefits. So at the end of the day, vets can be the biggest winner at the moment.
And I was going to ask Elise to wrap up, but I think that's a perfect wrap up. I think that's a perfect wrap up. Yeah. So Elisa Moran, CH2 vet, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again on next week. Bye for now.